What's up YouTube? Ryan Panny here. Hope you guys are doing reasonably well. You know, the whole reasonably well thing, it's always a little tongue-in-cheek when I say that, but I feel like in 2020, so far at least, that is the most realistic goal that most of us have been able to strive for. I mean, we're all just trying not to get sick or worse. We're trying not to get our friends and family sick or worse. We've had stock market volatility up the wazoo. We've had an exponential increase in unemployment, at least here in the US. We had a new country pop up in the middle of Seattle where we're headed into another really ugly presidential election. I feel like reasonably well is about what we're all aiming for right now. Metal music so far this year, I gotta be honest, this is one of the weakest years or half years for metal that I can remember in recent memory. Like, I never have trouble coming up with 10 metal albums that I really love halfway through the year, but I kind of did this time. Maybe some of that is due to the Rona just wreaking havoc on all industries, and obviously in music there's been album delays and tour cancellations and all kinds of shit, but I don't know. If you look back at all my metal mid-year lists, you can tell that I'm really enthusiastic about those 10 records, and I'm in general just really hyped about the state of the genre. But this time around, you know what, maybe it was just time to have a slower year, and that's no biggie. But don't let that assessment get you down. I still have some fucking awesome metal albums from the last 6 months to recommend and or debate with you. A few of them are a lot lesser known too, which is always really exciting because I like turning people on to new bands. Some honorable mentions before we get started. There's not a ton, but I like the Testament record a lot, which I reviewed. Annihilator 2, that was a good record. I returned to a lot of songs on there still. Havoc, a huge drop off from the last record, my goodness, but I still like it. And My Dying Bride is another one that like critics have gone crazy over. I'm not quite there, but I've still definitely enjoyed it. I still listen, especially that first track on there, I've listened to over and over again. This new record from the band Ulthar has been pretty cool. So there has been good stuff to listen to for sure. And I am happy recommending these 10 records that I'm about to recommend. They are a good representation of what I've been listening to so far in 2020 as far as new metal music. So here they are. At number 10, I am squeezing in this new Protest the Hero record, Palimpset. I made this list back in the last week of June, and this had just come out, and I had to just make room for it because of how much I loved it. First off, like pretty much every Protest the Hero record before this one, for how complex and how noodly a lot of the music is, the fucking production, it's so well engineered, and the sound is so crystal clear. And songwriting wise, much like Fortress in particular, this album really exemplifies how to successfully pull off the exceptionally difficult marriage between eccentricity and unconventional song structures and odd time signatures on the one hand, and real songs and melodies on the other hand. Few bands can pull off that combination and strike that balance as well as Protest the Hero do on this record. But the true icing on the cake for this record is the really thought-provoking and compelling lyrical themes, much of which deal with the darker side of history, whether it's American colonialism in the song Little Snakes, or it's the complex, to say the least, relationship between international conflict on the one hand and domestic economic health on the other hand, especially through the lens of World War II in this case, in the song called The Fireside, reference to the Fireside Chats. This record is definitely thinking man's metal, but made for a notably wide audience. Oh yeah, and I'm doing favorite tracks now too. A viewer suggested that a couple months ago that for these lists I do like top 3 tracks, so here we go. For this record in particular, I don't know, Reverie, From the Sky, and maybe Little Snakes. Number 9, gotta give to Abysmal Dawn with Phylogenesis. This is just an ugly, miserable, angry, relentlessly pessimistic record that straddles the worlds of tech death and brutal death quite well. You know, a little bit of The Faceless, a little bit of Hate Eternal and Morbid Angel. But I mean, just look at the song titles here. A Speck in the Fabric of Eternity, Mundane Existence, Soulsick Nation. This is a remarkably unhappy album. And frontman Charles Elliott's vocals and the dissonant riffing do a great job of capturing that. I didn't really need that death cover at the end, but the first 8 tracks of the album are some of my favorite death metal I've heard in the last couple years. Favorite tracks, True to the Blind, Hedonistic, Coerced Evolution. And number 8 is Cycle of Suffering by Sylosis. This is actually my introduction to the band, and I really enjoy their sort of the Haunted-esque approach that mixes groove metal and thrash metal, and of course they toss in a little bit of new wave American heavy metal for good measure as well on tracks like Invidia. This is the type of album that I would have worshipped at 14 years old because it's produced like Ashes of the Wake, but it has a lot more melody on the one hand and a lot more stylistic diversity on the other hand. And shout out to that ballad at the end of the record, Abandoned. When you feel like you've just got them figured out, they pull off a genuine tuneful and not embarrassing ballad. Favorite tracks on this record, Abandon, Disintegrate, and I would say Nvidia. And number 7, a record that I reviewed in depth a few months ago, Code Orange's Underneath. Definitely check out that review for some more well-organized thoughts on this record, but I'll just say that as one of the holdouts that thought that Code Orange were really overrated, especially with the hipsters that kind of pick 1 or 2 metal bands every year to prop up, they finally delivered for me on this album. The band's songwriting here matured significantly while still feeling completely unpredictable and exciting and constantly knocking you off balance. Basically, and also they had a lot to say lyrically here as well. Basically what happened is the band's song composition finally caught up with their novelty and their fresh approach to the metalcore genre. Favorite tracks: Swallowing the Rabbit Hole, Back Inside the Glass, and the title cut. Next, for this old school death metal revival that's popped up with people all of a sudden caring about that sound and bands like Tomb Mold getting recognition, there's no record that I've loved more in this movement than Death Monolith by Like Rats. This is everything I enjoy about 90s death metal in particular personified. The riffs are thick and chunky and toggle between these towering and lumbering grooves, and then of course that supercharged blend of thrash and hardcore. Songs like Omega Equation would really make Bolt Thrower proud, and the catchiness of the guitars in the song Foul Wind, my goodness, I can't recommend this enough for all the death metal aficionados who watch my channel. Favorite tracks: Ash and Rain, Death Monolith, and Foul Wind. Okay, breaking into the top 5 now is Firebride by the Finnish band Black Royal. This is probably gonna be the least known record that I discuss here, so it's most important that you check this one out and support them. It's a tough record to categorize. It's clearly part of that entombed lineage where you hear elements of stoner rock and hard rock creep into what's ostensibly death metal. You know, the whole death and roll thing is definitely a very prominent influence on this record, but to me, it's not a death metal record aside from the vocals. This record is so much indebted to Sabbath and Judas Priest with the larger-than-life presence of the guitars and just the amount of space in the compositions. This record, it's kind of like if that band King with a Y played something a little bit heavier. I think High on Fire fans will really dig this record, and anybody who loves their extreme metal as much as they love their traditional metal will really eat this up, like me. Favorite tracks are All Them Witches, the Firebride title track, and what's the name of that other one? Gods of War. It's funny, I had to think about Def Leppard to remember the song. Number 4, I am giving to Kvelertak with Splid. I just continue to adore this band's combination of, on one hand, the fast and loose punkish energy with their exceptional feel for mood and atmosphere on the other hand. I think those are 2 things that don't often coexist. And the fact that you have songs in here that are just pure sleaze rock, like Discord, on the same track list and sort of fitting together with a song like Delirium Tremens, which eventually morphs into this full-on black metal assault. That's just so exciting. Then you have the almost pop-punkish vibe of the song Tevling. You have the very dynamic extreme metal tinge closing track, which I'm not even gonna bother to try to pronounce. This band continue to stand on their own, even as some of the critical darling elements have melted away. I'm still here, I'm still loving them. When I put together playlists of like new metal music that I enjoy, their music just like pops out. It's just so different from everybody else. Favorite tracks, I gotta read these here. Fandin Tadete Hul. That's best I could do. Delirium Tremens, which I mentioned, and then the closing song, which I'm not even gonna try. So for number 3 here, this might be an unpopular opinion, but look, as much as I did enjoy the new My Dying Bride record, Ghost for Ryan, which I referenced at the beginning of the video, it was ultimately the Paradise Lost record, Obsidian, that really quenched the doom metal part of my tastes. This LP is just the perfect listen for gray days. I actually, for like a month, used to wake up to the single Ghosts every day, where by the way, frontman Nick Holmes just has that mesmerizing baritone, because it was a nice way to sort of ease into the day, especially when I wasn't really feeling it, you know? And while the track Ghost does have that immediacy to it, and I still love it, it's ultimately tracks like the towering Fall from Grace, or the sort of Agalloch-esque Serenity, or the song Ravengoss. That's where this album ultimately flexes its muscles. And in the broader context of the Paradise Lost catalog, is it gonna unseat an album like Draconian Times? Of course not, but is that what we're looking for here? Favorite tracks: Hope Dies Young, Serenity, which is very Agalloch influenced, and Ghosts. Number 2, my runner-up here, maybe the best surprise of 2020 for me so far, the Warbringer record, Weapons of Tomorrow. Whoa. I remember when Warbringer dropped their debut and that whole like thrash revival thing that was going on that bands like Evile and Lazarus AD were doing. It didn't do much for me. It really felt stale, even for being like a younger, newer version of thrash. And Whether I was right or not, I sort of lumped Warbringer in with those bands, but you listen to this record and the evolution is fucking amazing. This is a powerhouse, like potential thrash metal classic, and mostly because it really expands the scope of the genre, not unlike the way Vector have been able to do the same thing. The seamless integration of extreme metal into amazing tracks like Heart of Darkness and Notre Dame is equally as joyous as the pure thrash clinics being put on display in songs like Power Unsurpassed and Black Hand Reaches Out, Firepower Kills. This is just a fucking unbelievable record. And I'm so glad I really gave it a chance because it took a few listens for it to click for me. And if you're not necessarily a thrash guy, I recommend starting with Heart of Darkness and then just working your way out in the track list. I promise this will be worth your time. Favorite tracks? God. Heart of Darkness, obviously, Black Hand Reaches Out, and Notre Dame. And finally, at number one of my favorite black metal records of the past several years, And Oceans with Cosmic World Mother. This has fucking everything that I look for in the black metal genre. It's got the atmosphere. It's got the production that's not too polished, but not too shoebox either. It's got some of the melody that you need to make a decent black metal record in 2020. It's got that enveloping brutality that it thankfully doles out in pretty healthy doses. I've been coming back to this record and the Warbringer record, more by far than anything else I've even talked about on this list. I highly recommend you guys check this out. Favorite tracks, definitely As the After Becomes the Before, Cosmic World Mother, and I'm gonna butcher this, but Apocatastasis. I think that's how you say it. And that will do it. These are the 10 metal records that I really encourage you guys to set aside some time to check out. I know time is valuable. Here we are. It's the end of July, and I'm shooting a video that I basically put together at the end of June, so I know how valuable time is, and I do not take this task of recommending albums lightly. So I really hope you guys enjoy these. Definitely check them out and let me know what you think in the comments, and please leave me your top 10 list, because kind of the point of this is just to share what albums we've heard so far. I'm sure there's a couple great ones that I've missed, as the metal underground is vast and seemingly never ending, but you know, this is the list that I put together. So yeah, let me know what your list is in the comments, and let me know what albums I may have missed. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video and are not yet subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so by clicking right over here, as well as checking out any of the other rock or metal related content that I publish on this channel on a weekly basis. I really appreciate you guys watching, liking, disliking, just engaging in any fashion. Twitter, Instagram handle @RyanPantyMusic. Again, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you soon.